Good evening, I'm Ces Oreña Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Now it can be told, Vice President Sara Duterte has formally endorsed the candidacy of re-electionist Senator Amy Marcos. The VP's push for another bed of President Marcos's Alianza is still not as black and white, though.
And over 14 million Filipinos consider themselves poor, a self-rated assessment that interlocks with recent surveys of incidents of hunger continuing to rise by the day.
And it's one of those times of the year for a long holiday. In airports and bus terminals, there's already a steady stream of passengers as expected. Later on, we check the situation over at the PITEX and NAIA this Holy Monday.
Itim ang kulay ng pakikiramay.
Itim ang kulay ng pakikiisa.
Itim, laban ng tama.
Itama ang mali.
Iboto si Senator Amy.
A photo of Vice President Sara Duterte with senatorial candidate Camille Villar and her father, former Senate President Manny Villar, is now making the rounds online. Former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque posted the image with the caption, "Politics is addition after all." Another photo shows VP Sara with presidential sister, Senator Amy Marcos, who recently withdrew from her brother's Alianza slate. So far, Villar has yet to confirm receiving an official endorsement from the Vice President. As for Amy, well, the VP's endorsement is official.
A previous endorsement for Amy came from PDP Laban President and Senator Robin Padilla. The presidential sister herself announced Padilla's support in a Facebook post on Saturday, April 12. The post included a short video of their conversation where they discussed industries that she plans to focus on. No word yet from the palace, but President Bongbong Marcos reportedly remains confident in his slate. Meanwhile, one Cebu party leader, Governor Gwen Garcia, endorsed several Alianza senatorial candidates during a weekend rally in Cebu. Her list includes Manny Pacquiao, Tito Soto, Ping Lacson, Pia Cayetano, Camille Villar, and Abby Binay. Governor Garcia said her endorsements were based on shared ideologies and principles.
Dili automatic nga ang tanan nga hilakip karon sa alyansa nga pundok iindusar sa One Cebu. Kaya nga tong pilion kadtong adunay pagbati alang sa Sugbo, mulaban sa Sugbo, ipakita dili lamang sa pulong sa buhat gayon ug atong kasaligan.
Alianza campaign manager Congressman Toby Tiangco welcomed the endorsements and said, quote, "Every bit of support counts." He also said that Governor Garcia's support carries weight, especially since Cebu is vote-rich and the governor holds national influence. Tiangco also assured that the coalition will fully support all its candidates by mobilizing its wide-reaching network across the country. Before closing the event, Governor Garcia warned against political conflicts without naming names. She urged Cebuanos to remain united and to resist being divided by conflicts from outside the province.
Kanindot day anino magkahiusa ta. Way away-away. Ambot lang karon hinoon sa kauluhan. Itong mga dagko dito, sige away-away. Ngano kung ato nang tugtan nga kita dinhi hitakdan. Uy, uroy, kamoy pagpili sa inyong impyerno kay dinhi sa Sugbo, langit ang among gitinguha. Kung kinsa man na sila.
Time now to have a quick chat with the resident political pundit of One News, Ronald Llamas. Were you surprised by the endorsement of the VP for Amy?
Not too much. Dahil matagal na sinasabi ni Amy, kahit mag-isa na lang siyang natitira, hindi niya iiwanan si Sara at saka si Digong. No? Ang problema nung launching ng Alianza campaign sa Lawag ay nandun siya. Kaya yung ibang mga pro-Duterte ay medyo nag-react, including si Mayor Baste Duterte, including si former spokesperson Panelo. At lately, si common law wife ni Digong, si Hanilet, just 2 days ago. Medyo binanatan niya yung Senate hearing ni Amy. So, kaya hindi naman nakakabigla. Pero, ayun nga, is it enough? Isn't it a bit too late? Dahil practically last 3 weeks na lang. Dahil sa Holy Week, mahirap naman kumampanya. Kaya tapos, kasabay naman yan ay yung endorsement din kay Camille Villar. Huwag natin kalimutan, si Amy at saka si Camille Villar at si Pia Cayetano are all members of the Nationalista Party. At si Senator Alan Peter, who is also a member of the Nationalista Party, ay medyo actively dinedepensahan si Digong at this point. No? Lalo na yung violation daw ng kanyang human rights at saka due process. So parang yung buong Nationalista Party ay nagko-consolidate ngayon around Sara and Digong. At nakikita naman natin in the past yung Villar mother and son sa Senate ay medyo malapit naman talaga sa mga Duterte. Halimbawa, nung dinepensahan nila si Kibuloy, nung siya ay aarestuhin at ayaw nilang ipatawag sa Senado, kasama sila dun sa 6 na pumirma na senador na dinedepensahan si Pastor Kibuloy. Ikalawa ay nung Senate hearing ni Sara at saka ni Digong, malinaw naman yung kanilang pagkiling toward Sara at saka Digong. At nung naaresto si Digong, ay yung kanilang patriarch, si Manny Villar, ay naglabas ng very emotional support kay Digong. At binalikan pa niya yung kanilang mga pinagsamahan, dagdag yung mga litrato. Kaya ngayon, nung in-endorse ni Sara si Camille, ay hindi na nakakabigla.
But now that the Alianza bets may be reduced in the Magic 12, do you see the administration supporting candidates outside the independent candidates?
Well, dalawang bagay, Ses. No? Una ay ang statement ni Toby Chanco, yung campaign manager ng administration slate, especially sa Senate. Ang kanyang statement ay hindi ibig sabihin nito na nabibiyak o umaalis sila sa administration slate. Ibig sabihin lang nito ay yung kanilang mga kandidato ay ine-endorse ng mga ibang mga puwersa. Okay sana yung ganung statement kung hindi totally antagonistic ang relasyon ng mga Marcoses at saka Duterte. Open warfare na sila talagang existential survival battle na. Kaya kung sasabihin ni Toby Chanco na okay lang na in-endorse ng kanilang mortal na kaaway yung dalawa sa kanilang kasama sa kanilang slate, medyo hindi yata maganda yung dating nun. No? Nagmumukha lang very cynical yung ating politika. No? Kaya tingin ko ay magkakaroon ng mga debate within the administration slate kung okay lang ba talaga na yung kanilang mortal na kaaway, like Sara, ay i-endorse yung kanilang dalawang kandidato. No?
So you expect...
Kaya ay medyo desperado si Amy at si Camille dahil either nandun sila sa bingit nung 12 or katulad ni Amy, medyo lumalayo na. Medyo lumalayo na doon sa 12. Kaya medyo desperate sila ngayon.
Ngayon ang Cebu, which is a traditional bailiwick of the Dutertes, you saw Governor Guen give a strong push for PBBM senatorial slate. Ito kaya ay kaya ni Guen Garcia i-deliver?
Yes, kaya niya. Pero kung na-notice mo, Ses, hindi kompleto yung kanyang in-endorse. No? Mga, ba yun, 9 o 10 yung kanyang in-endorse. Parang meron siyang mga hindi sinama. No? So, yun yung una. At ikalawa, meron siyang mysterious statement na huwag tayong sumama dun sa mga away sa labas ng Cebu. Ano yung ibig niyang sabihin nun? No? Dahil meron talagang away na malalim na. At yung away na yan ay medyo fundamental in terms of between the Duterte and the Marcoses. Ang ibig ba niya sabihin ay ayaw nilang merong kampihan do sa away na yon. Medyo strange yung statement na yon. Siguro tanungin natin si Governor Gwen Garcia, anong ibig niyang sabihin nun?
And finally, is it wise, smart of Sara now, VP Sara, to endorse candidates because she will be facing the Senate in an impeachment trial?
Well, theoretically, dapat hindi. No? Dahil nga siya ay nakasalang sa impeachment. Ang tanong pa dyan ay, sino yung ibabawas nila sa kanilang slate? Dahil meron silang 12 kandidato sa PDP laban eh. So sino yung kanilang dalawa na tatanggalin para halimbawa kay Aimee at para kay Camille or possibly para kay Pia? No? Sa ngayon, hindi pa naman officially ine-endorse ni Sara si Pia. Pero kung sakali, sino yung dalawa o tatlo na kanilang ilalaglag o tatanggalin sa kanilang slate in favor dito sa kanilang dalawang in-endorse o tatlo. No? Kaya yun yung siguro na magkakaroon ng implication. Hindi lamang sa administration slate, kundi sa slate ng mga Duterte.
Okay, the Senate race got more interesting. Maraming salamat sa iyo. One News political pundit Ronald Llamas.
Salamat din, Ses, Sean at saka Colleen.
All right, let's move on over to another story in another continent where former President Rodrigo Duterte's family and allies continue to call for his return to the Philippines. They all showed up in a candlelight rally in front of the International Criminal Court Detention Center, despite reminders from the ICC that such protests will have no effect on the case. Mon Gualvez with that story.
Through prayers, lighting of candles, and singing, supporters of former President Rodrigo Duterte marked his first month in detention at the International Criminal Court. The prayer vigil was held just outside the ICC. Their message was clear and unwavering: bring Duterte home. Among those present was Duterte's common law wife, Hanilet Avancenia.
Pinapalakas lang namin ang loob niya. Sabi ko, pray lang tayo, pray lang tayo. Maano pa rin ang pananampalataya niya sa Diyos. Sabi niya, kung ano daw ang will ng Panginoon sa kanya. Yun ang
Hanilet's simple request is for consideration for the 8-year-old former president.
Hindi ko maintindihan hanggang ngayon. Sabi ko, miskin ang kung mag-usap ako sa Panginoon, tinatanong ko. Kasi miski na lang siguro kaya ako nagaganito kasi alam niyo naman ayaw ko. Miski baka makita na lang ba, awa na lang. Awa na lang. Miski wag niyo na lang anuhin. Wag niyo na lang respetuhin. Awa na lang. Total, nagserbisyo naman yan, di ba?
The vigil also saw the presence of key Duterte allies. Former Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea made his first public appearance since undergoing a heart procedure in The Hague. Former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque returned to the site after a week-long absence. He once again criticized the Marcos Jr. administration for allowing Duterte's arrest and transfer to The Hague. Roque claimed he now expects more harassment, especially after being linked to the controversial Pulveron video.
Ang pulveronic video po ang nagbigay patunay sa matagal nang sinasabi ni Tatay Digong na matagal na niyang alam na gumagamit ng pinagbabawal na droga ang Marcos Jr.
Roque also called on police and the military to cooperate on what he calls their fight against the administration in support of Duterte, whereas the family simply calls on supporters to continue praying for the former president. 5 more months before former President Duterte faces again the ICC trial chamber for the confirmation of charges against him. During this time period, a lot could still happen, including a possible petition for the former president's interim release be heard. Reporting from the Netherlands, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
And at this point, let's bring in one of the former president's allies, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa, who's on the line. Magandang gabi po sa inyo.
Magandang gabi sa inyo, ladies. Magandang gabi sa ating lahat.
You're on the campaign trail. Nasaan po kayo ngayon?
Nandito ako sa El Salvador, Misamis Oriental. Mayroong rally yung PDP dito.
Okay, kala namin El Salvador.
South America.
South America. Senator, so we just saw the endorsement ni VP Sara kay re-electionist kasamahan ninyo, Senator Amy Marcos. Kayo rin ba nasorpresa o tungkol sa endorsement na ito?
Hindi naman actually ako na surpresa dyan. Matagal naman na yan silang magkaibigan. No? Matagal na yan silang magkaibigan. At nung isa naman, si Camille Villar ay matagal naman talaga rin kaibigan yung mga parents nila. No? Si Speaker, President Villar at saka si former President Duterte. Parang si father na yan ni BP Sara, si SP Manny Villar. So, hindi pa ako nagulat dahil close yan sila. Close yan ng mga pamilya.
Sasama na po kaya sa rally ninyo ang dalawang kandidato?
So far, hindi pa naman. Wala pa naman. Independent action naman yun ni Vice President Sara, no? She being not a member of the PDP Laban, may sarili siyang desisyon. Pero yung sa PDP Laban naman ay wala na formal communication na sila i-adapt.
Okay, Senator Bato, nauna na ngang i-endorso ni Senator Robin Hood Padilla si Senator Amy Marcos. Nilabas niya ito sa kanyang Facebook page over the weekend. Kayo rin ba may planong suportahan si Senator Amy on that same level, no, na talagang one-on-one support?
Well, pag-usapan na PDP Laban kung ano maging decision ng partido, then I will abide by the decision of the party. Basta ako, wala akong problema kasi ito ay close kami, magkaibigan kami. In fact, best friend ko yan sa Senado. Pero still, I have to abide by the party decision kung sila ba ay tatanggapin as adopted candidates or guest candidates ng partido.
Senator, kaya namin tinatanong kasi may mga nagdududa and nagpasaring na rin si Senate President Chis Escudero na ginagamit ang Senado para sa re-election bid ni Senator Amy dito sa mga hearing na isinagawa niya tungkol sa pagkakaaresto sa dating Pangulo.
Hindi naman siguro in some way, somehow nagagamit niya yung hearing. Of course, yung exposure, venue yan for being visible. But then again, nakikita mo naman siguro yung hearing na hindi naman siya talagang seryoso siya sa kanyang ginagawang hearing. Hindi naman yun na padrama-drama lang. Totohanan talaga yung hearing na ginagawa niya.
Okay. Balikan ko lang ulit si Senator Robin, no, at yung video na inilabas nga with Senator Amy because yung understanding ko is si Senator Robin ngayon yung parang head ng PDP Laban. So that is a personal decision. That's not, kumbaga, hindi siya reflective of a party decision, yung pag-e-endorso niya kay Senator Amy.
No, it's not a party decision dahil hindi namin napag-usapan yan. Personal niya yun. Personal endorsement lang niya yun. Hindi yun party endorsement.
Okay.
Senator, just shifting to a different topic, over the weekend, inanunsyo po ni ICC Assistant Counsel Attorney Cristina Conti na posible daw pong may lumabas na arrest warrant mula sa ICC laban po sa inyo in the coming weeks. But Senator, ano po ba ang naririnig nyo?
Naghihintay lang naman ako kung talagang meron yan. Wala pa tayong magagawa dyan. Hintayin lang natin yung ano magiging decision ng Supreme Court doon sa aming pending petition sa Supreme Court. So, hintayin na lang natin.
Pero Senator, I mean, initially, di ba sabi niyo po, you will vow to go into hiding, but eventually sabi niyo po, willing po kayong pumunta po sa Hague at harapin ang ICC. So does that mean, kung dumating nga po itong arrest warrant, you will be fully cooperating? Tama po ba yan, Senator?
No. Wala akong sinabi na mag-cooperate ako. Ang sabi ko lang is noon na gusto kong pumunta doon kung may tsansa na may tsansa na makalapit ako kay Pangulong Duterte. Pero yun nga, nung nalaman ko na at yung family members niya, hirap na hirap makapunta sa kanya, makabisita. So, there's no point of going there kung hindi ko siya makita.
Ano yung plano nyo, Senator, kung sakali lang, no, na maunang lumabas yung warrant bago yung desisyon ng Korte Suprema?
Sinabi naman ng ating Senate President no, na I can avail of the protection of the Senate while hinihintay yung desisyon ng Korte Suprema. So I can stay within the Senate premises para hindi nila ako hulihin habang hinihintay yung desisyon ng Korte Suprema.
Now, on another issue, Senator, there's been a recent spate of kidnappings, especially involving Filipino-Chinese. And ang itinuturo ay mga remnants ng POGO operations. Ano po ang masasabi ninyo dito?
Remnant na POGO operation, o kung sino man yan, kung may mga iskalawag man dyan na involved, still it's kidnapping. Kidnapping po ransom pa rin yan at nakakasira po yan sa ating imahe at nakakasira sa ating ekonomiya.
Bilang dating PNP Chief, Senator, ano po yung assessment niyo no, sa pag-handle ng current administration ng PNP dito sa spate of kidnappings? Do you feel na parang baka scapegoat lang yung POGO, lahat na lang binibintang doon, or satisfied naman kayo sa gulong ng investigasyon?
Kulang sila sa focus sa kanilang trabaho. Dapat tutukan na yan. Huwag na sila makapokus dito sa yung mga order na galing sa kanila ng mga order sa kanila para may mga political implications. Hindi masyado sila nakapokus doon. Dapat doon sila mag-focus sa kriminalidad na dahil wala na. Yung confidence ng tao nasisira kapag ganyan palagi. Alam mo na, hello.
Sir, panghuli, just for clarification, Senator. Tinatawag na ba kayo sa entablado o paano? Ano ba nangyayari? Senator?
Tinatawag ako sa entablado.
Talaga po. O, sige. Marami pong salamat sa inyong...
Pasensya na.
Maraming salamat sa inyong tanong. We just had Senator Bato de la Rosa in El Salvador, Misamis Oriental.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but coming up next, more than 14 million Filipino families now feel poor, and that's according to a recent SWS survey. We'll get the insights of Ibon Foundation Executive Director Sunny Africa on what this means when the big story returns. Keep it here.
You're watching the big story here on One News. Manila continues to slump in the Smart City Index. It now ranks 125th out of 146 cities, falling 4 spots from last year. This is Manila's lowest ranking ever, based on data from Switzerland-based International Institute for Management Development. The Smart City Index tracks how cities use technology to improve daily life. It looks at 5 key areas: health and safety, mobility, activities, opportunity, and governance.
Also, a new social weather stations or SWS survey shows that over 14 million Filipino families consider themselves poor. That's a staggering 52% of 1,800 respondents surveyed between March 15 and 20. This figure is slightly higher than the February one, but down from 63% last December. More Filipinos now say that they are not poor, reaching a record high 36% this quarter. Meanwhile, about 12 to 14% see themselves as borderline poor, slightly up from 11% on the year. The highest self-rated poverty rates came from the Visayas and Mindanao, while Metro Manila recorded the most families who don't consider themselves as poor.
Manila's Smart City ranking continues to drop, and millions of Filipinos still consider themselves poor, with hunger on the rise. And to help us make sense of these numbers, we're joined by Sonny Africa, Executive Director of Ibon Foundation. Good evening. Let's begin with the drop in Manila's ranking from down to 125 out of 146. We're the cellar dweller. And all these dire results of surveys, what does this say about the country?
Well, first off, I want to start with, hello everyone. Sorry, good evening. We actually have a problem with these smart city indices because they do tend to emphasize a very narrow technology-oriented view of progress. Unfortunately, deploying technology without the real context of inequality, informal economies, extent of public services, actually would tend to give a misleading picture of the real state of the city. So I think it might be appropriate to more higher income countries to talk about technology, but with more basic problems, in all honesty, I wouldn't give too much weight to smart city indicators. Having said that, I think it's a bit revealing, especially with all this hype about reaching upper middle income status. I don't think very many people realize that even by the indicator of gross domestic product per capita, which is the main indicator for upper middle income status, the Philippines is actually in the bottom third worldwide. So I think the result of the smart city indices indicated by IMEDE, I think it just actually reflects how there is actually quite a lot for the Philippines to do in terms of even the basic technological infrastructure. But again, I do want to stress, we shouldn't be too obsessed about the technology and infrastructure, because there are actually more basic problems, I think, in terms of assessing, our cities by more development-oriented, people-oriented metrics.
Okay, true. So let's leave that survey, set it aside, and go to our internal problems and the survey on poverty as well as hunger. Actually, the survey on hunger is really more surprising.
Yeah.
May you comment?
Yeah, our main comment is, if you look at actually the details of how the SW survey was presented, they noted a decline in poverty, in self-rated poverty in general. It went down from about 63% in December to 52%. So self-rated poor actually went down, but it was actually very striking that while the number of self-rated poor and percentage fell, the number of hungry Filipinos actually increased. I think that's quite revealing, because our main concern about a lot of the anti-poverty, anti-hunger social assistance programs, especially in the run to the election period, they're becoming very politically manipulated. So for the longest time, we've been complaining that there is a problem with the general decline in aid this 2025, but with the declining aid, a larger portion of it going to more, let's call it discretionary political purposes, I think that reflects very well in the SWS survey, where basically those who are really needy, the poorest, apparently didn't get it because hunger, the most basic need being food, the neediest didn't get the aid apparently, hence the increase. However, those on kind of the, I think, upper end of the poverty scale, those of the borderline poor, they actually fell, reflected in, I think, lower self-rated poverty. I think that does tend to support the notion that a lot of the aid didn't go to the most needy, but they went to the most maybe politically expedient for politicians.
Or those have been said, right? Yung mga ayuda does not exactly go. Specifically, yung mga iba napupunta sa kulang yung income, etc. But, Sonny, what I wanted to ask is, while all these results are coming out, while all these surveys are coming out, nag-reorg din yung NEDA and naging DepDev siya. What do you think of that that change? And do you think ito ba talaga yung solusyon? Is this a good move? Should we actually be, tinkering with these things?
It seems to be a cosmetic change because the bottom line is, you don't need an organizational change to address the problem of, for instance, hunger. What's the problem with hunger? Two things. Are foods too expensive because agriculture is being neglected and has been for decades? Secondly, Filipinos don't have the purchasing power because the economy is not creating enough jobs or quality jobs to give them purchasing power. So you don't need actually some whatever change in NEDA to fix that. You just need a reorientation, spend more on agriculture. Let's not normalize agricultural backwardness. Also, spend more in developing industry like the US is doing to create jobs in the Philippines that are quality, expanding for the formal sector, and actually increasing the level of productivity and incomes. And that we always have these sort of cycles of cosmetic or shows of change, when in the end, I think it's so alarming. Decade after decade, administration after administration, they all have their own gimmick to try to change things, but they just have to focus on the basics. You have to spend on agriculture, you have to spend and protect domestic industry. And if you don't do those two things, if you're afraid to antagonize whoever, whatever political entrenched interests might be affected, all these things are just going to be for show.
Well, Sunny, you also have the SWD Undersecretary Irene Dumlao referring to this rise in hunger as just public perception, while she suggests that what they see in government data is quite different. What do you make of the government's methodology where they base it on family income and expenditure compared to the SWS survey, which actually asks a sample of the population?
Well, of course, it is half true that there is no single perfect indicator or survey. There are pros and cons to the SWS survey. The main pro is that it's frequent, it's quarterly. So it's very odd for the government to not be doing more frequent surveys to measure poverty and hunger. So one big thing going with the SWS survey, it's frequent, so it gives high, a very updated data on the state of Filipino families. Its main con is that, of course, it is a subjective indicator. Basically, ask them, do you feel poor? Have you experienced involuntary hunger in the last 3 months? So in that sense, it's a bit weak. On the other hand, government poverty surveys, they will happen every 2 years. And for the longest time, they will happen every 3 years. There's supposed to be an annual poverty indicator survey that has been stopped for lack of a budget. The family income expenditure survey, the last happened in 2022, I believe. The next one is in 2024. The results we'll get in about late 2025 or maybe early 2026. So big problem with the government data. It's not happening frequently enough. There's no budget for that. At the same time, the strength is it is based on a bit more quote-unquote objective indicators of how much incomes families have. But I think it's a bit disappointing. I didn't hear that until now. It's a bit disappointing for the Social Welfare Secretary to sort of fall back on outdated government data to see that things are doing good. I mean, if unless there's any doubt to the veracity of the SWS data or the methodology, it is important to recognize poverty is widespread, is deep. Hunger is the best indicator of how deep poverty is. It is increasing, and there are other reasons to support that. Joblessness is worsening. There are no real new jobs being created, and compared to the past year, the last day before survey, maybe about 200,000 jobs have been created, but mostly informal jobs, meaning low earning, low purchasing power. So I think if you put together a lot of different indicators, it actually supports more strongly the idea that food is expensive despite low inflation. Filipinos can afford food because they're have informal jobs, uncertain jobs, low wages. At the same time, there's the SWS survey saying people feel poor, 52%. People feel hungry, and sorry, experiencing volatile hunger, about 27%, so about 7.5 million Filipinos. I think it's very disappointing, honestly, if the Social Welfare Secretary said that if anything, the government should err on the side of caution and conservatism, not sort of be so dismissive. I mean, that's a bad sign. And changing the NEDA's name or reorganizing it, if it doesn't change the attitude of people towards the poor, towards a desperate need, to change your attitude towards your basic economic policies. I mean, again, case in point, it's so much sound and fury in the end, signifying nothing really.
The contrast is so stark between the figures on hunger between the Visayas and Mindanao and Metro Manila. How can the government, address this quickly? Going back to the USEC of DSWD, they attribute this to Canlaon.
They're saying it's dragging down the national figure because of the protracted eruption.
Disasters, typhoons.
Right.
I'm so sorry. I've been depressed. Maybe I've been paying attention to media. I think to look for single factor problems, that is the problem. I mean, the reason for there is so much poverty, it's structural. People are poor. People do not have any jobs. Those who don't have jobs aren't getting enough supplementary income from cash assistance. Even if they do get, food is expensive on the market. So I think, of course you have, variations around the trend of deep poverty, deep hunger. Of course, once in a while, there's a calamity, there's volcanic eruption, you have El Niño episodes. But the thing is, all these natural occurrences, we know they happen. So I think it's a bit weird to be blaming these one-off occurrences as if they were one-off historically, without realizing they are a chronic part of the Philippine landscape of poverty. If you want to fix poverty, fix the basics, and then do the emergency measures in reaction to, again, these episodic occurrences. And I think the bottom line is, for instance, just for 2025, the government cut the budget for Ayuda. From the about 80 billion cut in Ayuda, main biggest change was 60 billion from the 40s. The government Ayuda program was cut, and then the smaller Ayuda program, a bigger amount was put in the hands of politicians through the protective services for individuals, to the notorious ACA program. So I think that's the problem. That's where the problem is right there. The government should have resources, but it's not using it well. The government should mobilize more resources, but out of austerity measures, they're cutting Ayuda, but they're not cutting infrastructure programs that really benefit big corporations in the NCR-CLST. It's so crazy now. They have 2/3 of programs, infrastructure programs, focused in NCR, Central Luzon, and Southern Tagalog. But the most needy regions with the biggest hunger, the Visayas, Mindanao, they're not even getting the infrastructure that is supposed to be the flagship pro-development program for government. So I think there's just wrong. This is a wrong orientation. The government can do so much, but it's not actually doing the right things in the right places.
But that's exactly the irony, right? We've been talking about this exact same topic, and it's exact same justifications and the exact same reasons. But in your assessment, Sunny, is there any sort of policy that has improved in order to serve these people or our people better, especially yung mga nasa laylayan, no? Just to give us like a bright spark.
Well, I think it's better to see how dark things are so we can set things right. I mean, if we're going to look for a bright spark, there's no point. I mean, in the reality, since under the Marcos administration, even according to the SWS surveys, the number of self-rated poor has increased from about 12 million in June 2022 to about 14.1, 14.2 million now. So there are more self-rated poor beyond the population increase. Even worse, the very poorest of the poor, hunger. There are about less than 3 million hungry families in June 2022. It's more than doubled to about 7.5 million right now in March 2025. So I think rather than sort of find bright spots in what? I don't know, Kadiwa, the food stamps program, food security emergency committees. I think it's better to realize all these cosmetic or shows of effort, like the Kadiwa Center, the food stamps program, the food security program. I think it's much better to accept these aren't working because they're cosmetic solutions. So we can do what needs to be done. And again, let's not normalize agricultural backwardness. Let's not vilify ayuda as if it's a dole-out thing. Ayuda is needed in times of need. But fundamentally, if you want to fix the ayuda program, it's about creating jobs. And if you don't do, for instance, an industrialization program, if the most powerful country in the world, the US, sees fit to protect and support American industry, what more the Philippines whose industry has been hollowed out for the last 40 years? I think the basics are there. It just has to be given attention to.
Well, thank you very much, Sunny Africa, Executive Director of Ibon Foundation, for painting a clear, real picture for us.
I'm so sorry. I want to find a bright spot, but hope you guys can think of something. Thanks for inviting us.
We appreciate the honesty.
Thank you. Good night.
Right, well, in other news, President Bongbong Marcos will be with his family for the Holy Week break. But before going on vacation, the president called out rude stunts online for views, particularly that of arrested Russian-American vlogger Zodorovetsky's.
Sira ulo ko. Hindi naman Pilipino, pwede ko mamurahin.
In his vlog, President Marcos called Vitaly's actions enraging more than engaging, urging Filipinos not to support similar content that makes fun of our people and culture. The chief executive also has a reaction to the spate of road rage incidents, some of which had turned fatal.
Ang tatapang na natin lahat. Siga lahat. Huwag maging kamote. Masyado nang madami yan. Yung ibang tao din sa paligid, umawat tayo. Imbis na mag-video, ituring na natin mayroon tayong tungkulin na panatilihin ang kapayapaan sa paligid natin.
The first online overseas voting in Philippine election history has begun, but already there are reports of alleged irregularities. Some overseas voters said the encrypted QR code they got after the procedure did not yield the names of the candidates they voted for. COMELEC Chairman George Garcia has an explanation.
Pag pinindot po kasi nila yung QR code, ang lalabas po doon hindi na yung pangalan ng mga kandidato na kanila pong binoto. Lalabas po dyan ay machine-readable codes ng lahat ng kandidato. Mapiprint po yan sa post mismo. At doon sa post, mabe-verify nila kung tama lahat. Meron din tayong random manual audit. At sa random manual audit, pwede pong makumpara yung mismong code as against doon sa na-print na mara-random manual audit. Kaya lang hindi namin pwede mabigay kaagad o ma-print nila yung pinaka-resibo nila dahil pwede pong gamitin na pampabayad ng boto. Hindi po.
Garcia adds that votes can be verified in any of almost 80 COMELEC posts across the globe, but only after the elections are over. Right now, there's over 1.2 million voters overseas. Only 55,000 have registered to vote online. For its part, the palace hopes more overseas Filipinos will vote now that it's easier for them to do so.
Yan po ay karapatan po talaga nila. Dito po nila mapapakita ang kanilang boses. Bumoto po kayo ng nararapat. Bumoto po mula sa puso. Huwag pong bumoto dahil lamang sa bulong o dahil kayo'y nabayaran. Kundi iboto niyo po ang mga taong nararapat. Yung maaasahan po natin, mga leader na hindi ibebenta ang bansa kahit sa anumang paraan. At mga leader na makabayan.
Time to pause for another quick break, but right after that, the Holy Week exodus is on. Airports and bus terminals are busier than ever. We check on NAIA and PTEX next. Keep it here on One News.
big story is back with the traditional Holy Week exodus. And as in every year, the country's main gateway, NAIA, is expecting a surge of travelers for the long Lenten break. Here's that story. NAIA is getting busier by the day as travelers head out for a much-needed Holy Week getaway. Among them is a group of senior citizen friends called the Golden Ladies. Their bags are packed and ready for their Euro trip and Holy Week pilgrimage. They are just a few of thousands passing through NAIA for the holiday.
Thanksgiving for all graces. At the same time, magnilay-nilay. Sana mayroon ng peace throughout the world.
Last week, the Manila International Airport Authority has issued an advisory of a possible uptick in passengers by 20% or between 155 and 157,000 travelers per day in airports this Holy Week. To help avoid delays and long lines, MIA opened check-in counters for each flight much earlier.
Kung kinakailangan magbuka sila ng 4 hours before para hindi na magpila ang mga passengers natin, ay mangyayari na yan.
While many see Holy Week as a time to rest, a traveling priest also has his reminder to everyone to use this time as well for reflection.
Well, yung bakasyon, part naman yan ng kahit mga tao tayo, no? Kahit na nasa bakasyon kayo, no? Bigyan natin ng panahon na magdasal.
To ensure the safety of travelers, airport security has been tightened. In addition to the usual screening areas, security personnel and K9 dogs are now patrolling the area. The airport's parking area has also been expanded to accommodate more vehicles for drop-offs and pickups. At NAIA Terminal 3, 12 immigration counters are now operational, along with a newly opened lounge for OFWs to rest in. Meanwhile, an additional 48 immigration officers and acting immigration officers have been deployed to handle the influx of travelers.
And over at the Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange, or PTEX, there's also a steady stream of passengers. Some trips are already fully booked, while other bus companies have added more trips to accommodate the demand. During his inspection, Transportation Secretary Vince Dizon called for improvements for a better experience for commuters, particularly to fix the scheduling system of the short route buses.
Walang oras na pagdating nila dito na fix. Problema yon, no? Kailangan kung ano yung sistema natin para doon sa mga mahahabang biyahe, ganun din ang sistema para doon sa mga maiigsing biyahe.
Dizon also checked bus terminals along EDSA Pasay and was visibly frustrated by poor conditions there. Passengers had no proper waiting areas, restrooms were dirty, and buses did not arrive on time. Dizon also noted illegal terminals at PTEX, but the DOTR will not close these yet, as many passengers have already purchased tickets. The agency is also looking at the construction of a PTEX-like terminal in Valenzuela to serve north routes.
Kitang-kita mo naman, hirap na hirap yung mga kababayan natin. Hindi ba? I mean, they deserve better than this. Look at this. Di ba? And illegal ito. This is not a legal terminal.
All right, let's end this Monday night with a splash because our big picture tonight is the annual Songkran Festival. The streets of Thailand turned into the world's biggest water fight on Sunday, marking the start of the Buddhist New Year. With plastic guns, water hoses, and buckets, thousands funneled down Bangkok's Khao San Road amid the booming rhythm of techno music. The festivities come as a welcome return to routine after the earthquake that panicked Bangkok residents just 2 weeks prior, leaving 30 confirmed fatalities so far. Songkran was recognized by UNESCO in 2023 as part of the list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The holiday is a time to symbolically wash away misfortunes, pray for prosperity for the coming year, reunite with family members, and honor ancestors and elders.
So it reminds me of the
Wata Wata,
yeah, in San Juan.
Yes. We should apply also for UNESCO.
For what's that? For Wata Wata?
Yeah.
We should.
It's a tradition also.
Yeah. And it's
Mas
rooted.
malaki lang yun sa bangko.
Tsaka ano yun, parang Holy Week nila eh. 4 days walang office, di ba?
Pero okay na rin yun kasi mainit, di ba?
Yeah. Oo, parang it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, actually.
Alright, we can do songkran in our own backyards, I suppose. But that's it for the big story tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thank you for watching. Good night.